Suez is talking about fracking as a solution to the future. I am proposing code over there fracking my homeland and killing our people in the name of a false solution.
When a voice of dissent is raised and the immediate response is to try to arrest people and to try to stop them from speaking. Look at me. What's your name? What are you doing? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just suspended from the bank.
These companies are destroying our planet. They continue to increase carbon and pretending that they're doing something about it. They are risking the future of our lives. NG's making billions while people in my local community suffer health consequences for their greed. They have the dirtiest fire coal power station in the world.
Wait, are you joking? We're journalists. We're journalists with the United Nations. What? We have oil.
Hello, my name is Carlita. I am your host, and you are listening to Sailing Beyond Knowledge on our new location, which is mixcloud.com. Previously we were at Podomatic, and I've moved here because it's more economical, and you can find some old podcasts at Podomatic, but I've lost a lot of the archives that were stored on archive.com because the archives got corrupted somehow there, which is rather unfortunate, and I haven't been able to retrieve any original recordings for some of those archived episodes. However, we are back with new beginnings, and it's very synchronistic since I nearly died earlier on this year in August. I won't go into details, but I'm just very, very lucky and very fortunate to be here. So there's that side of things, and I'm an environmental activist and writer and author living in Ecuador in South America, and I follow a lot of news regarding alternatives to the current environmental crisis. So I have a few things I'd like to focus on today. One of those things are the activities at the COP21 talk in Paris, unfortunately, the world government has been stepping up, and it seems that freedom of speech has been taken away from many of us. I've certainly experienced this recently on the last few weeks on various social networks. I'm currently censored on Twitter. SBK Radio, Sailing Beyond Knowledge Radio, can be found on Twitter, and I've been censored there. I can't upload any photographs on Twitter at all. I can make posts, but I can't upload any photos. And on Facebook I have 2 accounts, and one of my accounts has been censored for about 2 weeks. I won't be able to use it or post in groups until after the 9th of December. And another account was censored as well, where I couldn't post in groups either. I know lots of people, other activists, who have been censored on Facebook. And unfortunately, this is just an example of the government stepping up worldwide, using their terrorism agenda to stop us being able to speak freely, because we are now extremists. We are domestic terrorists if we speak our mind against the corporate takeover of politics. And that's what today's subject is about. In my opinion, as an environmental scientist with a background and training in environmental science and climate and so on and so forth, I am aware of the full picture regarding climate, and I am not sucked in by the global warming hype, because there's a very big agenda behind it. Nonetheless, the planet is still very much in danger. Even though the climate has been changing for millions of years and will continue to change, because that's what climate does, and we've been a lot warmer than today in the Roman times and the medieval period. However, nonetheless, we are being pushed to tipping point ecologically, and it's not due to climate, but it's due to the consumption of oil and gas that is causing ecocide. I mean, we have about 150 to 200 species of plant or animal disappearing each day, and it really is important that we focus on reducing consumption of oil, not emissions, and that's where I think we've got it all wrong. Let me just put it in perspective. Basically, the current consumption of oil is around 87,000 barrels per day, and next year we will reach an absolute record breaker of 97 to 100,000 barrels of oil that we will be consuming worldwide per day. 100,000 barrels of oil per day. And therefore a lot of my work and my articles are to do with pointing people towards alternatives that currently exist, such as the water fuel cell car, which Honda are releasing next year, and I think it's pretty much based on Stanley Mayer's earlier design in the 1980s and 90s before he was finished off. But this car has been trialled and tested, and it runs for thousands of miles without needing to be recharged. So we've got that technology available for us, as well as solar powered cars that have also been trial run and tested across Australia for 3,000 miles or so before it needed recharging. So the infrastructure is lacking with regards to these cars and the technology that's already there. However, this is ready to go, and if governments really cared about the climate and focused on consumption and reducing consumption rather than focusing on emissions, which this whole global warming thing, the agenda is about, also because bankers and politicians gain around trillions, about 30 trillion per year in carbon taxes. And also the reason why they push the global warming hype is to really manipulate, divide and distract good people for the severe repression of sanctions on very poor countries. And these sanctions increase poverty in countries like Africa, Asia and India, to control and plunder their natural resources and gain access to their conflict minerals such as gold, diamonds and coltan, which is used to create phones and new technologies such as laptops and Android phones, iPhones and so on and so forth. Because the cheapest country where coltan is mined using slave labour. It could be mined in Australia, but they mine it in Africa. The other reason why the global warming hype is pushed forth is as an excuse to spray aerosols in the sky for geoengineering purposes. And it's known that lithium, barium, aluminium, strontium have all being sprayed in the atmosphere for various agendas, and they contaminate the soil, the water, the air, and dispersing nanoparticles in the name of cooling the planet, but instead it's killing our pollinators, bees, trees and amphibians. At least 43% of amphibians have been confirmed to be extinct already. And amphibians are particularly important bioindicators for this kind of issue, since they breathe through their skin as a secondary breathing apparatus. They're very susceptible to toxins, environmental toxins. The other agenda behind global warming farce is to tighten control over the world's water reserves and resources, to orchestrate a scarcity of water, to increase the prices of domestic water, and to urge people to tax water even more so. So basically these are agendas behind the global warming scare. And global warming alarmists tend to get their data from climate models which are based on flawed assumptions instead of relying on empirical data such as weather balloons, the Vostok ice cores and so on and so forth, which have shown that temperature leads carbon dioxide, which is a natural gas anyway, even though it's emitted with a lot of these other gases in polluting industry. However, going back to the crisis, the environmental crisis, we are in a desperate environmental crisis now, and we are living in an unfolding ecocide. So it really matters not whether the climate is warming or cooling. Climate is changing, but it's really influenced by geoengineering, which is a big concern, and that's also causing ecosystem collapse. And unfortunately, that's not doing the planet any good right now. The biggest problem that we have currently, as well as fighting for alternative energies, is getting people aware that the alternatives are out there, and getting people to focus on reducing consumption of oil rather than on the emissions, because as I just stated earlier on, we are going to be reaching a record record-breaking 100,000 barrels of oil per day that will be bleeding from the earth. And we don't really want to be doing that because it's causing ecocide on a grand scale. And so it's my hope that people will listen to this and become aware that these issues are more to do with the consumption of oil rather than emissions. That's where we need to be protecting the planet and pushing for these alternatives that are available. Like I said, Honda are launching the water fuel cell car onto the market next year. The only problem we have there is the lack of supportive infrastructure because oil companies and politicians earn over $100,000 per hour in profit from oil per hour, per day, per oil company, and they will not give that up for anything. So we're up against a whole lot more than just emissions. We are dealing with a huge corporate takeover of politics. Politicians have been completely corrupted by financial takeover. It's shown in the Trans-Pacific Partnership as well. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, it allows the corporations to pay off politicians and change certain laws to push through corporate interests. Millions of dollars right now has been given to different politicians. Example, Republican Rob Portman of Ohio received $119,000 from Goldman Sachs and $15,000 from Pfizer and $12,000 from Procter & Gamble. Roy Blunt of Missouri received $77,000 from Monsanto. And then there's John McCain, who is rumoured to be the financer of ISIS. He's received $51,000 recently. There's no source of where that's come from. And these are just examples of what's really behind the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's a takeover of the political world by corporations. Corporations are buying up politicians. And this same stuff is going on with the oil industry and fracking industry. Oil companies and fracking companies pay politicians humongous amounts of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to make sure that they gain access to certain locations where they can extract oil and so on and so forth, and frack the last wildernesses, drilling and fracking. So this is what we're up against, and this is also why we're experiencing a repression of free speech. There's been going on also in the COP21 talks. Indigenous people have had their rights campaign right now. There was a protest on the 4th of December by Indigenous people demonstrating inside the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the protest was carried out to highlight objections to the proposed removal of Indigenous people rights and human rights from Article 2.2 of the draft of the Paris Accord of COP21. And this again is due to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They are partly to do with this. The rights of Indigenous people are being taken away, so they have no way to stop companies going into their land or oppose or demonstrate against energy companies going into their land for fracking or oil drilling purposes. The rights of Indigenous people all over the globe are being violated by these politicians and climate people at the COP21 who are really just interested in money and their wrong kind of green, which is corrupting the climate talks at the moment. The indigenous people have had their rights to speak freely removed in Article 2.2, and I will put a link to the articles that for people to download alongside this podcast. Free speech has been targeted as a means to manipulating the agendas of these corporate cartels and allowing them to continue this ecocide. So I will move over to the article that I read and discuss in a moment. I'm just very excited to be back podcasting. Albeit very crudely, I've been recovering from illness, so my funds and equipment is very basic, but I'm hoping that will improve in the future as things change and I land on my feet again. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and please do share it with others to raise awareness of the wrong kind of green and our fight for free speech and to protect the earth, which is our God-given right, and no corporation or politician should be able to overstep the law on this.
Keep tuning in to Sailing Beyond Knowledge Radio.
Doesn't matter, every sinner is a prisoner in a body that is subject to time. Now, my entwined mind tries to form a straight line, not like twisted scoliosis at the spinal cord. Construct cross-eyed carpenters are cutting crooked lines. Can't construct man-made shrines when the winds in the water move the sands of time. Many minds on a deadline, yet live life like a live wire. I'm not tired of blood and fire. Spirits moving higher than the green grass ever lifted me. Spirits moving higher than anything else ever lifted you. See, we got spirituality. It's living in us like a 1 and 3. Injustice is concerning me in the non-linear eternity. I'm speaking paradoxically, but you could nod your head now when you understand me. This is for my free men whose backs won't bend in the lion's den, now with their eyes on the end aim. This is for my free women, they fight with their love, the barriers of our children. Free men whose backs won't bend in the lion's lion's den, now with the odds on the ending. This is for my free women, they fight with their love. The barriers of our children, we shine like lights, exposing what lies underneath, decomposing. Unearthed old chains that are rusted, oh sweet Lord, is that what I trusted in? And that sin, that tomfoolery, what it is mental jewelry that I adorned myself with. The enemy's gifts, the man-made myths, the ignorant bliss of marijuana spliffs and alcoholic fibs. I got so sick and tired of it. Delivered and redeemed by Christ, I mean. It's time to start living and get a reason for the rhyme. I don't wanna be dead wrong on the deadline, standing on the dark side and all out of time. Like a blind pantomime, spin the sides, climb up his own ladder through the sunshine. Nothing's mine that hasn't been given. No one's alive here that hasn't been risen. For 19 years I was trapped in a prison. Feigning my escape by means of derision, but every man-made attempt just failed when trapped in a jail of my own guilt, shame, and iniquity. I was looking for freedom. How'd I find freedom? Oh, oh, freedom from all of this. He said believe. He said believe. Who are you telling me to believe? He said I'm the Christ. Oh. He said I'm the Christ. So I believe. Freedom.
Hello, and my name is Carlita. I am a writer and advocacy journalist for Ecology News and various other websites, and my WordPress site and blog, which is the Silent Eco Side, which you can find at wordpress.com. I have authored a book called The Silent Ecocide, The Environmental Crisis as a Crisis of Human Consciousness. I want to talk today about a serious issue that has come to my attention and the attention of fellow colleagues and activists, truth activists and political activists alike. One of my colleagues is Alfred Lambremont Webre, who is a very well-known alternative news journalist, lawyer, and his current status is that he has been censored on Facebook from posting in various Facebook groups, well, in all Facebook groups. This happened a few days ago for him. And he suspected it was due to his affiliation with endorsing Andrew Bastiago, who is running for candidacy for presidency next year, who promises to expose the disclosure of our affiliation and communication with extraterrestrials and truth in general. My recent experience happened today. After already having another profile of mine taken down and closed, with just being on my new profile over a few months, yesterday I experienced censorship of my posts, so I am unable to post in groups also. I'm a member of some 50 or so groups in Facebook. Many of them are about free speech, human rights, anti-Zionism, anti-prejudice, environmental groups, and so on and so forth, as my focus is on environmental solutions and the stop to repression of free energy solutions. I usually post my work on solutions to oil. As of next year, we will be reaching a record high on the consumption of oil, from 96,000 to 100 barrels of oil per day. And my work really points people into thinking about stopping the consumption of oil altogether, which is causing severe ecocide here in South America with regards to the rainforests. We won't have any rainforests in 20 years' time if we continue to pump out 100,000 barrels of oil per day, when we already have alternative solutions which are in the form of water fuel cell technology, which has already been tried and tested. Same as solar technology. Both these kinds of solutions are vehicles that can run for thousands, hundreds of thousands of kilometers without needing to be recharged. These are realistic solutions that are being repressed and ignored by governments and corporations alike and their vested interests, as they are stakeholders in oil companies which earn over $100,000 per hour. So as of this connection to the war on free speech and the war on terrorism, I would say that the continued consumption of oil and drilling of oil in the Middle East and the continued war on terrorism in the Middle East by the USA, the UK and various European Union affiliated countries that support the persecution of Palestinians, Syrians, Libyans and Afghanis, Iraqis and Middle Eastern people, simply because they want to control the oil pipelines and the gas pipelines. Another example is the Ukraine situation, where the US are trying to control gas pipelines from Russia that are delivered to the European Union. This is the agenda behind the whole war on terrorism and these false flag events that are being engineered by governments alike. So I would like to invite people to come forward and contact me. Anybody who is experiencing restriction of free speech on Facebook or other social networks, please contact me, and I will invite you to a panel discussion with myself and Alfred Lambremont Webre and other prominent truthers. I also heard that Ian Crane has just been imposed and censored with posting on Facebook, and other activists who are significant in the geoengineering movement. So this is a very serious and very big issue that has been caused and launched by these Zionists and people with political agendas who are running Facebook, which is no longer a social network that supports free speech. I would advise all activists to move over to mine.com, which has been encrypted for privacy and is an open source network that is not controlled for any political agenda. It's obvious as of this week that those of us who are on Facebook have been severely censored. So I want to move into my article on free speech, and it applies to all forms of truth activists, not just environmental activists. And the title is "We are environmental protectors, not extremists, not terrorists, not protestors." And a quote from Glenn Greenwald here: "The measure of a free society is not how it treats its good citizens, but how it treats its dissidents." So, those of you that have been following the Paris attacks, which are extremely suspicious and have left us with many, many questions after the mainstream media has interviewed and posted so-called victims of the Bataclan theatre. There's plenty of information online regarding that, which lead to very serious questions of truth. After that, 24 environmental activists classed as extremists were arrested by the French government and put under house arrest for 2 weeks, so they cannot attend the climate talks or the marches. The French government also imposed a ban on public marching for the COP climate talks. And this is a gross abuse of power that risks turning the summit into a farce, and it is a farce already. We know that the summit only is geared towards agendas for bankers such as Goldman Sachs, who already started the campaign in the US to gain at least 30 trillion in carbon taxes per year with this so-called restriction on carbon emissions, which have proven to do absolutely nothing. As I've already said, the attention needs to be on stopping the consumption of oil altogether, because oil itself is the reason why we are seeing these worldwide wars and severe violations on human rights. Okay, so from the environmental activists put under house arrest, it seems there's a number of people worldwide I've heard about that have been put under house arrest this week. I also know somebody who's being put under house arrest next year because of his affiliations with the Fighting for Aboriginal Rights in Australia. So we're going to look into campaigning to stop that house arrest, because he will be put under house arrest for a whole year, simply because he's been defending the land rights of Australian real Aboriginals, real Australians who are the Aboriginal people. So I just want to go back to talking about where this started, where this form of social engineering, free speech, has kind of been cultivated from. And it started way back when Margaret Thatcher was still in power. I remember seeing and hearing the words eco-terrorists or environmental terrorists being brought into mainstream media and newspapers my article from here on. I remember seeing and hearing the words of politicians and media came up with environmental terrorism, a label for environmental campaigners, animal rights activists and conservationists that were now being seen as a threat to everyone that wanted to make money. A media campaign was swiftly implemented to make people forget that we are not protesters but protectors of the environment. In the mid-1980s, these corporations got together and created a new word, eco-terrorist, because at that time these protest movements were growing very quickly and effectively, and they had widespread public support. There clearly was a concern that unless public opinion shifted, there'd be a really big problem on their hands. This was a quote from Will Potter and his book Green is the New Red. What Will Potter does is bring people's attention to the newspeak and rhetoric which has been carefully nurtured by politicians and their media puppets for social engineering. Whistleblowers and journalists can now risk imprisonment for speaking out. And this was a new legislation implemented in 2014. The very fact that this has become a political measure indicates that we definitely do not live in a democracy, more like an imperialist corpocrisis. While any hope for improved transparency in governments globally is becoming less apparent, it is more like a global movement where special intelligence agencies, politicians, banks and corporations enjoy further protection and privacy from the public as a result of these new laws enforced to encourage any form of investigative journalism, which has been valued in the past by people such as Edward Snowden and Julian Assange to expose corruption in corporations and government and legal systems, while we see our privacy and human rights and become further eroded. It's very apparent right now. We're all experiencing this very, very strong form of censorship. We really need to be campaigning for further transparency on these government agencies and politicians that are not wholly operating for the good of all humanity. This is clearly evident now. This war on terrorism allows governments to treat everyone as equally suspected terrorists, not just internationally, but also on a domestic level, where domestic terrorists are now seen as equally threatening to government. They are usually local activists involved in some form of campaign or advocacy work for local people or indigenous people alike, including environmentalists and advocacy journalists. If you are caught handing out leaflets, perhaps to raise awareness of pollution in your local community or a human rights issue, you can be accused of inciting terrorism and be put under house arrest. 2014 was a good year for law reformers and politicians pulling the reins on free speech. In a meeting with the United Nations last year, David Cameron stated that people campaigning for the truth into September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center and conspiracy theorists were to be considered in the same league as ISIL and ISIS, or whatever the anagram may be, terrorists, as threats to society and labelled non-violent extremists. Peter Drew responded from the Centre of Research on Globalisation. He submitted an open letter to David Cameron in response to this speech, asking Mr. Cameron if he was aware of many members of US Congress demanding that President Obama release the 28 redacted pages of the 9/11 Commission report, because there is information in those pages that will shock the nation, and according to two members of Congress who have been authorized to view these pages. Or if Mr. Cameron was aware that more than a dozen of first responder firefighters who risked their lives on 9/11 and who lost 343 of their colleagues that day, including those who formed the organisation Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, and the more than 2,200 professional architects, scientists and engineers and demolition experts from the organisation Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, in addition to 100,000 New York residents who signed a petition calling for the new investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center Building 7 through the High-Rise Safety Initiative. Hasn't this war on terrorism greatly benefited governments and corporations alike to tighten the belt of their game for more control and power over the average people, the average person, and their freedom of speech, thought and expression? People who are simply trying to make the world a better place. There are the rare extreme cases of activists who have damaged property in certain situations, but these are not common. Not common enough for this kind of censorship to go ahead. For the most part, environmental conservation and truth campaigning has and continues to be a peaceful work carried out by normal, everyday people, but which has now become dangerous work due to their being labelled non-violent extremists and eco-terrorists or environmental terrorists and conspiracy theorists under these new legislation to curb terrorism, while the government continue to encourage discrimination and condemnation of environmental and human and animal rights campaigners, journalists and whistleblowers as a threat to government, not society. They always say as a threat to society, but it's as a threat to government and the government agendas which are not for truth and not for human rights and not for the rights of the planet or the environment or indigenous people. It is the government that is unleashing terrorism upon us and the planet. Now, these reforming laws that are chipping away at human rights and allowing governments to spy on people are also progressing towards imperialist fascism that is becoming systematic and prevalent from country to country, especially with the new martial law that's been creeping into Europe and South America alike. This includes internet gagging, cyber gagging laws in the name of anti-terrorism or to protect copyright content, which is really used to block and control the free flow of truth and information or access to truth on websites that are for researchers, journalists, whistleblowers and environmental activists and human rights activists for truth and justice. This is a form of social engineered persecution that has been cooked up and brewed for the last 30 years or so. While our pursuits towards truth and justice, defending the environment and people's rights against exploitation is becoming a dangerous pursuit for more of us today and our civil liberties than to the elite and their corporate investment agendas. Environmental and animal rights activists and human rights activists are now considered the United States' #1 domestic terrorist threat, as well as in the UK and Europe, the same thing. And they can now be prosecuted, we can now be prosecuted as criminals and go to jail or be put under house arrest. Environmentalists and truth activists question at the core what it is to be a human being, what it is to have rights, what it is to speak freely. We ask questions that reevaluate economic interests and reevaluate environmental interests and our rights to clean air, clean health, clean food that is free from toxins, and clean energy. So these vested corporate and political interests are being protected from those of us that are demanding better standards in environment and human rights worldwide. So therefore we have become a threat to these corporate agendas. So due to this progressive persecution of any form of activism for truth and justice, there is an increase in murders as well as cyber-gagging of truth whistleblowers and environmental defenders, as now the laws and selected judges seem to be more in favour of protecting politicians and their corporate investments rather than the truth and justice, which has become a subconscious affirmation in the social arena, making it easier for those that do the killing to literally get away with murder and fascism, which is being cultivated right now and seems to be highly prevalent. So on that note, in the spirit of free speech and environmental activism, again, I invite anyone that is experiencing this censorship to join us on a panel with Alfred Lambremont Webre and myself to discuss these issues and their repercussions. So thank you for listening today. My name is Carlita, and I shall leave you with further information below so you can contact me and join us in this discussion. We will be launching a media campaign regarding this. We do not accept this form of silent fascism against our rights to speak freely and think freely. This is not going to carry on anymore. We resist, and we hope you will join us. Thank you.
What is truth when we lie to ourselves about so much and know so little? What is the universe made of? How big is it? Is it eternal? Which politics are best for society? Even Pigsy understands that certainty is only another delusion.
Oi! Master, wait! I think I might give up girls!
The Buddha said such questions do not matter. If you were to put off the search for enlightenment to answer such questions, you would never find the path.
I said, oh great mammon, form and function, careless consumerist consumption, dangerous dysfunction, disguised as expensive taste. I'm a people disgraced by what I claim I need and what I want to waste. I take no account for nothing if it's not mine, 'cause it's a misappropriation of funds. Protect my 90% with my guns. Whose side am I on? Well, who's winning? My kingdom's built with the blood of slaves, orphans, widows, and homeless graves. I sold their souls just to build my private mansion. Some people say that my time is coming. Kingdom come as the justice running down, down, down.